Hey, everybody. So,
Hey.
I have the good fortune, the extraordinary good fortune today to be here with Daniel Donato, Danny Clinch, enjoying his morning or maybe afternoon, not sure, TBD beverage of choice.
Second cup of coffee.
Second cup of coffee. Oh, I could enjoy one of those. But what we're going to talk about here today is new video for Double Exposure off of Daniel Donato's last record, a new shirt from the Clinch Collections that the two of them have put together. Danny's shirt is very apt for what I'm going to get to a little bit later. So, for people who want to check out anything and everything that the two of them do, DanielDonato.com, DannyClinch.com, TransparentClinchGallery.com, ClinchCollections.com. There you go.
Well done.
Relix.com as well. If you're so moved, why the heck not? Right? Since we're at it. So how about this? Before I have questions I'd like to ask each of you and maybe intertwine the answers in terms of sort of bigger things. Then we'll talk about the video and we'll talk about the shirt. But since the two of you are here, can you, I'd be interested to hear how the two of you initially met, when and where that might have been. If you can recall.
I'm sure there's two versions to that story, as there is to most, but you go ahead, Daniel.
Thanks, Danny. If I recall correctly, I think it was in front of the gallery.
Yeah.
And we were on tour and we were playing The Saint back in, I think it was 2022. And our tour manager, Joe Lentini, and your son, Max, were best friends growing up.
Yeah.
And are still best friends today. And, there was always like, because I'm from Tennessee, essentially. I moved to Tennessee when I was 8, but we essentially lived on the shore in the weekends when I was living in New Jersey prior to moving to Tennessee. And the intervening place between where Joe and Max spent most of their time and where I spent most of my time seemed to be Tom's River. And so there was always this connection there that we had shared from our youth. And I always wanted to meet Max, and we wanted to talk about all the spots that we would go to as kids. And it was just, wild and synchronous to think that there might have been a time we were 8 years old and we might have been at the same beach together on the same boardwalk together. And so, Danny has this amazing, well-curated artistic space set up in Asbury Park that's right in the thick of all the action. And before we went to go get down to business for the day, we went to the gallery, and then sure enough, Danny was there. And I'd been a fan of Danny's since I was maybe 16 years old when I started discovering the photography side of the functionality of rock and roll. And I discovered Jim Marshall and Robert Knight and therefore Danny. And became a huge fan, and I'd always wanted to meet him, and I'd played my cool. That's just, Joe was like, that was just one of my dear friends growing up was Danny Clinch. I couldn't believe it. And then Danny, if anyone who ever meets Danny, they know it's just the doors are wide open. You can ask him any question that you'd like, and he's, very excited to share his journey and that he's had with his art and everything. And I was just thrilled with that because, a lot of times when you get to meet somebody that you want to meet, that can be a promiscuous situation because, they might not want to be so open to share or talk or converse with everything. But with Danny, it was just like we'd been friends forever. And I still remember that, you were generous enough to take a photo in one of those Leicas of yours of us all in front of the van.
Yeah.
And we went, I think we played a set at the gallery too.
Sure.
Yeah, you sat in with us, and very generous, like astoundingly generous, which is actually something I'm so grateful for, because it's a very important lesson for somebody to know is that no matter how successful that someone might be in their life, you got to always maintain that openness and friendliness to anyone that you meet.
For sure. Yeah.
Can I say this? First, I've seen Danny in so many different contests. For me, I'm just amazed that someone who I consider who is just so high fuel is so low key and very welcoming to. I've seen any number of people come up to him who recognize him, photography nerds, music fans, and just want to share something with him. And Danny almost can't. I've seen it happen. And Danny's almost like, me? What? You know, and it's, but you've done so many extraordinary things. And I do think that's part of the essence of who you are and why you do such lovely work is ultimately, it's not about you. You're trying to capture the essence of someone else without infusing too much of yourself. I don't know. That's my take. What's your take? What's your take on that, Danny?
Well, I mean, I think you always got to give back to the community or whatever. And I mean, I've had such incredible life experiences through my photography and filmmaking that, yeah, it's dumbfounding, and I'm happy to share them. You know, and every photograph, when you walk into the gallery, every photograph has some sort of story attached to it. You know, it's a life experience that's attached to it. So I'm always happy to share it. So, you know, and I got to add a little bit to the story of Daniel, because when I tell the story of meeting Daniel and Joe and having Joe Antini moved to Nashville from New Jersey, Joe started coming to Bonnaroo with my son Max when they were about 13 or 14. And Joe immediately looked around because, you know, they had some pretty good access. We were always hanging in the artist area where I did portraits of all the artists for 20 years. And Joe looked around and was like, okay, this is where I'm going to be living my life. I want to get in the music industry. And so that was a start. And we'd always dip into Nashville and that. And then my partner, Tim Donnelly, and my partner in See Here Now and my partner in crime, Tim Donnelly, and I encouraged him to move to Nashville when he was deciding what he was going to do. And he started out as a setting the pins at Brooklyn Bowl in Nashville, right? And then he was always wandering down the street and going to Robert's Western World. And he kept seeing this young guy ripping on the guitar every Thursday. I'm not sure what it was. And it just developed a friendship. And the fact that Daniel at one point was like, hey, our tour manager bailed. Do you feel like going on the road with us and looking after us? And Joe going like, this is what I'm living for. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so then the connection became that when they came through New Jersey, of course, Joe put us all together, and Max, and they've all become, it's so cool because my kids are basically Daniel's age, and they just have a community and a friendship that is just second to none. It's so cool to see.
You know, Daniel, you mentioned just Danny that he sat in with you, that initial. I wanted to show one image from 20 years ago. 20 years ago today.
Bring it on.
Specifically.
Wait, today?
Today.
Oh.
20. No, that's the main reason. It's 20 years ago today.
Come on.
This is the sound check at Coventry. So I guess 20 years ago today in a few hours. This is the sound check at Coventry. And Danny came on stage with Fish, and I was in the back, and I remember thinking, oh my God, there were no photographers. I had my camera. I'm like, someone has to capture this. So I tore down with my camera and took a bunch of pictures of this. Danny, I'm just curious. Well, I have two questions. Just first of all, what are your memories of, if any, of this sound check?
I don't actually remember how I ended up there specifically. I do remember that I ended up there. They must have asked me because I don't like to ask to go up and play with people. And so we must have had a conversation. And at one point, I guess Trey turned to me and said, yeah, you have a C harp. Because I believe it was a C harmonica. So they had to do a jam in G, I guess. And that was the only time I played with Fish, but it was pretty epic. That whole time was wild at Coventry. I had a film crew there. We were filming. All that craziness went down. I remember getting up in the middle of the night with Trey and grabbing my camera operator, whose camera had completely, you were inside in air conditioning, but when you went outside into the steaminess of what was going on, the whole camera fogged up, and we were trying to film him telling everybody that looks like this isn't going to happen, or, like all that madness.
It is. It is. I mean, honestly, that could have been very well the last sound check there ever was. That's at the time. That's what we thought.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
It's pretty
well,
amazing.
you can find that on you can find the jam somewhere. I've heard it like on YouTube or
Yeah.
like somewhere or another. It's pretty cool.
It was wild, just a weird weekend. But my point, in part, aside from just mentioning that. Oh, and by the way, Danny, real quick too, like I interviewed Jim Pollock yesterday because we do this festival newspaper. Ever since we do this festival newspaper. By the way, Danny and Trey right on the cover of the Coventry Courier, our first day's edition back in back then. Again,
Dude, I need some of those photos.
another one of my shots.
On.
But Jim really credits you, Danny, for the image that appears in the fish book of Pollock at the Great Went, selling his making his prints and selling them. Really for just elevating him, and he's so thankful. And he actually wanted me to convey that. I mentioned that I was going to be talking to you today. He wanted me to convey that to you. For what
that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, he and I talk often about like creating a poster for Transparent Gallery or for something we're doing at See Here Now or something like that. So that'll hopefully happen sometime and be really special. I remember, I think back about those times, and I was recently looking through some Springsteen images of mine, and I just remember, I actually this was actually this morning, and I said to my one of my producers at the gallery, Zach, I was like, this was when I was the only photographer there. I was shooting film. I had a pocket full of film and a couple of cameras, and now any show you go to, there's so many people creating content and shooting that you have, and then everybody with their phones. So like those moments, the one that you captured, you had to pull out a camera, I would assume, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so it wasn't like everybody was there. So those moments that were captured are so much more like special because, you were there with a camera and had to, get up there and capture it. It's different today. Everybody's got the,
One more thing, and that I want to talk about Cosmic Country and all that. But the one thing, Danny, so I do shoot. I for a long time when I was a kid, I did some work like in my local photography shop, and took it in high school, blah, blah, blah. And it's been fun always to shoot live. But the one thing about you that I notice is you're a lot of times what you're doing is you're shooting portraits or you're backstage and the like. And occasionally when I'm down in the pit with a bunch of other photographers, you'll come in, you'll take one picture and then you're like, okay, got it. And somebody I know, a friend of mine, we'll just watch you sometimes like, okay, look, Danny nailed it. And he's in and he's out. Any thoughts relative to that?
Well, I've been doing it a long time and I do understand, like, I do love a simple shot from the pit. That's a great moment. I mean, it's all about moments and it's all about storytelling, right? So I do appreciate those moments. I also am a fan of being up in the sweet spot behind the drum kit or behind some amplifiers and being able to pop up and capture the whole picture. So sometimes I know, like, if I get down there, it depends on the band too, where, like, okay, well, I got that, it's cool. I got bumped out of the pit recently somewhere. And someone was like, yeah, you're not supposed to be shooting right now. And I had already nailed the photo that I knew I needed. And I was like, oh, okay. Walked out. Okay.
It's just amazing. I find that it inspires me and it cracks me up when I'm just down there grinding it out for my 15. You come in the middle, take one and walk. I'm like, all right, Danny got it. Well, cool.
Usually I'm able to come back though when everybody clears out.
Right. Yes, no, of course. And you're, like you say, you're shooting from behind the stage. So Daniel, right? I mean, what you mentioned that Danny sat in with you. Danny himself is a musician. We've already seen it. We've talked about it. Do you think, Daniel, that he's sort of that Danny brings that sort of aesthetic to bear to your mind as a photographer, as a film director? Well, I'd just love to hear your take on that.
Well, to me, that's such a rare crossing of somebody who's able to have the confidence to create art in both of those realms and do it at a high level. That's one of the things that's really astounding, because there's a lot of musicians that I know that take photos, but they're not Danny Clinch level photos. You know what I mean? And so, if for somebody to be able to do both at such a high level, that's basically unheard of. I personally have never experienced that in my 15 years of playing music every day for my whole life and doing it, very intensely with that New Jersey work ethic that runs in my blood. I've never seen that. You know, and that was something I was really aware of at an early age when I started following Danny, and I knew what he was about. You know, specifically through the Tangiers Blues Band. So that to me, when it came time to have an opportunity to collaborate with Danny, you know, even on the first go around, I wanted to see what that was like, and then keeping in consistent with Danny's kindness, and also this just this immense desire of what it seems to just keep exploring and keep discovering, and to capture those moments. You know, from the first time we sat in with each other, it was at just an archetypal rock and roll moment of the club level of that reality of music. You know, it was at the Saint in New Jersey, hyper sold out. It's sincerely so sweaty. I remember Maria was there, and I remember you told me that she stayed for the whole show, which was rare. And then she showed me the calories that she burned at the show that night. It was just one of those amazing moments of just everyone's in this moment together. We're sweating, we're dancing. You know, the venue's running out of beer. It was just one of those beautiful nights. And I think we played 4 or 5 songs together for the second set of our music that night. It was just, you know, it felt like that's all Danny had done his whole life was play harp. And then there's a whole other facet of his personality that's expressed in his creation with photography, which is immense and unfolding unto itself. You know, and so that's a big thing that with Cosmic Country that I've always wanted to have in terms of a value that gets communicated in whatever it is that we create, which is this sense of livingness. You know, to me, it's not live music, it's living music. You know, because everybody that's in the room is living, and therefore the music is living, and it's a secondary thing to the personality of who it is that's either taking the photo or playing the harmonica or playing the guitar or singing the song. It's really their personality that's coming through, and then there's just like a vehicle of some sort of a form or a practice in which it can get conveyed. But there's a spiritual reality to that component, which is their personality, and that's the thing that I've always been seeking and been wanting to have come through in whatever it is that we create. And Danny does that, you know, pretty much like nobody else on this planet in terms of photography. You talk about live photography, and there's not going to be a single conversation that's worth its salt that doesn't mention Danny's name first.
You know,
Yeah.
just sticking with Cosmic. Go ahead.
I don't like to interrupt people, but these thoughts are going through my head as they're going. But it is the joy of being able to play music together is always like, it's the musical conversation, right? It's like I always say to people who don't, or who are thinking about music or are playing music, you know, young people especially, play an instrument, because you can go all over the world and have a musical conversation with someone who doesn't speak your language, but speaks the language of music. So you are up there. And then I've never thought about this until what you were saying also is the musical conversation is going on also between you and the audience, right? So that's kind of cool too. And to be able to do that with people that I've been photographing all these years, and, you know, finally either getting invited up to play or getting the chops or the confidence to get up and play with someone and have that musical conversation is just really just incredible.
In terms of Cosmic Country, right? First of all, people who have not heard about Reflector, I think it just does such a lovely job of capturing sort of the essence of what you do. But in the studio, you can listen to those same songs live, and you open them up, and they're pretty extraordinary. But I think the record on its own is just captures wonderfully what you do, including, you know, Double Exposure, what we'll talk about. But can you just talk, Daniel, just a little bit about finding your voice relative to that, as you were sort of mentioning in passing?
With the record?
With Cosmic Country in general, between the two, as you see fit.
I think it never ends. I think it's a constant process. That's why I think finding, is constantly the thing. To me, it seems to be never ending. You look at Trey or you look at Bruce, you know, those guys are still not settled. They're still going after it, and they're still working at something, you know, and it's not about the ticket sales, and it's not about, you know, having a house on the shore than having a house in the city. And it's like, to them, it's about the truth and the beauty and the goodness in their art, and the fact that those are what seem to be very obviously eternal values that inform what is finite, which are these material things that we do. So if you can have access to those in a way like some of my favorite artists do that Danny's worked with throughout his career, it seems to be very obvious that that's your life's mission, is to keep channeling in those things into forms that can bring value into people's lives, like concerts and songs and records and stories and things like that. All these forms, and that's something that I've always been at. And I was always unconsciously at it, really, for a while. And only recently did I become conscious to some degree of what it is. Probably not in an absolute sense, but definitely in some sort of a more of a higher percentage than I did when I was younger. I think I get more what I'm going for now than what I did a few years ago, and so forth. So I think the record is just another form of that. And so when it came time to have an opportunity to craft something that was a visual reflection of finding a voice and bringing those things into fruition, my first idea was, can we ask Danny and see if he's available? And sure enough, we were really fortunate to make it happen. And we did it out in Joshua Tree. And we also were able to cut a song over at our buddy Chris Thorne's studio, which is, Danny just showed me the other day, is going to be in a fantastic movie. We watched the scene together on his iPhone when we were in Asbury Park on July 4th, playing at the Stone Pony outdoor stage. And that's the thing that I think that happens when you're following truth and you're living in that way, is that there's an actualized moment of something, and you can liken that to throwing a stone into a river, and there's all these concentric circular ripples that come from it, and you're never really aware of what those peripheral events are going to be. That's the faith, I think, of following something truthful in your life and actually going on that adventure and that journey with a real trust that it's going to turn out and work out really well. There's all kinds of things that are going to happen that you can never have planned for. And those are the gifts to experience. And the fact that you can share it with somebody who's a brother like Danny, to me, it's eternal. I'll be able to carry on those moments into many lives past this flesh one that I'm in now, and always look back on them fondly. Because you just never would have planned for something like that to happen. And it turns out way better than you could have ever constructed on your own logical accord.
I want to talk about the video itself, but before we get there, still in big terms, Danny, can you talk about, in terms of moving from the world of photography to film, in terms of finding your voice or your vision? You can pick the metaphor you choose, where you felt good and what you drew on and when you became, comfortable. I remember seeing that, I think the Pleasure and Pain film that you made, probably at the first Bonner. I remember it was like screened in this little teeny, not even a stage, in 2002. But can you I don't know if that was it, or however you want to take it, that brings you to this moment.
Yeah. Well, the Ben Harper film, Pleasure and Pain, was the first documentary I made. And I remember meeting Ben, and I'd always wanted to do a documentary. And I was like, man, this guy is going to be making music for the rest of his life. And he has a really interesting story. His grandparents owned this museum / music store out in California in the Inland Empire. And anyway, so I did actually do that. But I was starting to think about moving image stuff. A lot of the photographers that I love, Robert Frank, Danny Lyon, are documentary photographers who went into filmmaking, and they weren't like originally filmmakers in my opinion, or in my knowledge. And I wasn't, educated in filmmaking. I just picked up a camera, and because I saw that they had picked up cameras. Robert Frank had done Cocksucker Blues for the Rolling Stones, and you'd see him wandering around with the Stones. And a couple other films. Danny Lyon had done a lot of socially conscious films, and I in the spirit of that, I went out and decided to make some films. I did a video for my friend Bob Delavante. I started to do just little videos and little shorts and things like that, and then I just began putting a crew together. With my friend Lyndon Narvaez, and just, going out to try to make some films. And I have made several, and I did a Bonnaroo film, 270 Miles to Graceland, I did the other Bonnaroo film, which I don't even know if they have a title for it, but it was the year that Trey played with the orchestra, and then My Morning Jacket, spiritual experience. I directed those films, and Pearl Jam films, Preservation Hall Going to Cuba, Foo Fighters films, John Mayer, Where the Light Is. I find a lot of people have seen the John Mayer Where the Light Is film, and I run into people all the time who are just like, "Whoa, you made that film?" Yeah, I did.
Yeah. That's a crucial film for people that are my age too.
Yeah.
That are, specifically guitar players.
Yeah.
It takes, I'm very honored to be in this conversation because, the time units of experience that I have are, not very large, but, it takes somebody who understands the creative act of music to specifically make a film that touches on the sensibility that film communicates. Like that's an astounding production, and there were many teenagers that saw that and that informed the vision of lives and what they wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people who've come through my studio, who are now successful, photographers and that, came through, saw the John Mayer film and came to the studio and said, I raise my hand to do whatever it takes to be involved in whatever you're working on.
Right.
Yeah. My friend Dan Prokopchek, who is doing great work now as well, came through for that reason.
Yeah, I do. I should say I have a soft spot for the Pres Hall Cuba film, which I think is pretty great and makes some connections that I think people wouldn't otherwise have seen. I think it's an important film that if people haven't seen it, I would encourage them to check that one out for sure.
And baseball fans and music fans got to check out Let's Play 2, the Pearl Jam film, because that's pretty good.
So in terms of double exposure, landing on the song, jumping back to that, what was that, Daniel or Dan, what was that process like? How did you pick the tune that you wanted to make a video of?
I think Danny came up with the concept. I don't know if we had landed on what song we were going to do in specific, or maybe we brought the song to Danny that we had decided. I'm very loose with all of those things. So as long as the music is telling its story, in terms of the record and what it's doing live, whatever we were going to do around it, for this record in specific, I was fine to pick any song. But I do remember, I remember specifically where I was. We were going to play 2 nights at Nectar's in Burlington, and then we hopped on the phone with Danny, me and the head of my label, Eric Eisner, who's a mutual friend of Danny and ours. We were talking about the concept for double exposure, and Danny came up with this brilliant concept, which is really in touch with where I think, with one of the positive sides of where the relationship between artists and listeners are today, which is making it a collaborative video. Because the interconnectivity that we have now, like you guys mentioned earlier in regards to Coventry and in other moments that were, maybe 20 years ago, is now everybody can participate in what's going on. Everybody has a camera, or they have a video, or something where they can be involved. And Danny came up with this idea, which is, let's get into a really small club and let's pack it out and take the concept of what double exposure is and have content that is from the stage, and then also bring in the audience and have them capture their own perspective as well. So we could have a double perspective exposure of what's going on with this song. And I just remember thinking, that's an astounding concept, and I would never have thought of that. So I remember that very well. It was very cold outside, and there was a lot of snow on the ground. And I was walking around in some alley somewhere, and we were just on this very quick 20-minute call. And Danny just dropped this idea on the video, and it just inspired the hell out of me. And I think we did it earlier in January this year. So,
it was right around my birthday.
It was, we had your birthday dinner over at Chris's house. Yeah.
It was cool. It's an idea that I think the Beastie Boys sort of spearheaded, which is, I shot this type thing, where they encouraged everybody to bring their cameras and phones, and then we had it set up to where we Dropbox all the people's footage into a Dropbox spot, so that we could use it in the edit. And so it was like a collaboration between the band and their fans. Like let's get everybody involved. Like, music is about community, and
Yes.
certainly do you see that in Daniel's fans, which I see from as is very expansive. Like I think a lot of young bands with people Daniel's age, they'll have like a certain demographic of young fans that are out there, and his like really stretches from young to older, and it's so cool to see. And everybody was super stoked. They're like, "Oh, you want us to film?" Like, okay, cool. So people were diving in and dancing and filming them. Not only Daniel and the band, but filming themselves dancing and having a good time and stuff. And of course, we bought our crew, and it was out in Joshua Tree. I mean, it was really cool. And my friend our friend now, Christopher Thorne, from Blind Melon, has a recording studio out there called Fireside Sound. And after we did the show at Pappy and Harriet's, we did some shooting on his property, which is like incredible Joshua Tree vibes. I mean, and the studio is like the sickest thing ever, that he and his wife just finished building. And we just had a great time doing it. It was really it was super fun, and we keep laughing. I just got to bring this up because not that anybody else will get it, but our friend Grant, who was helping us, who actually cut it, and Linda, my producer, we were all out there, and my friend Vance, we are just doing some shooting, and Grant walked backwards into a cactus, and like this little cactus, and it's literally stuck in his leg, and he walked away from it, and like the whole arm of the cactus was like stuck to the back of his leg. And he was like, "Oh," we're like, "Oh no." And we were all like trying to, how do you grab a cactus and pull it out of someone's leg? And Christopher comes out of the shed with a big pair of pliers.
Yeah.
Just pulls it out.
Total pro. Like you'd see the climbs out.
It was funny.
Yeah.
And then our guy who was camera operating didn't realize what had happened. And he's like, "You guys are in my shot, like get out of the way."
Yeah.
And we're like, "No, dude, he's got a cactus stuck in his leg."
Yeah,
Never
never do the droid too. Yeah, yeah. Oh man, yeah. If I'm not, am I holding one of those in the photo that's on the
Yeah.
on the
I
t-shirt?
keep saying it was that cactus that was stuck in his leg.
Yeah.
In
So
the
this-
photo, we're dropping a very limited edition, very cool Clinch Collections T-shirt of a portrait I took of Daniel, with his guitar in the desert, holding a cactus that potentially was the one that would pull out of Grant's leg.
So actually, I want to set it up and talk about, for people who don't know what Clinch Collections are, in 1 second. But before I forget, a lot of times, and this is not true of your work, Danny, but a lot of times when you're filming live music, it can feel very two-dimensional, very flat. And I think part of sort of not only the way you do it, Danny, in general, but specifically the way you brought in the audience, this does not feel that way. It really does jump out, and it's vivid and three-dimensional in a way that one could only hope, one would receive in terms of getting this music. So I don't know. I think it was pretty glorious all the way around relative to the way you went after it.
And it's very sort of, low production. It's like DIY, like let's have a great time, and with the fans included. Like that was my main pitch to Daniel was your fans are a really awesome community, and how cool would it be to get them involved? Do you think they would love it? And he was like, "Oh my God, yeah, this we have to do this."
Was that gig already the Joshua Tree gig? Was that already on the books, or did you add that for the purposes of the video?
I think we added it for the purposes of the video. We were doing like our first West Coast tour, and it was like a 14-show tour. And when we announced, within like 4 or 5 days, 12 out of the 14 shows sold out. And then we tour so much, and Danny does so much, that we were trying to find a place that would, calendar-wise, working for what we were doing, and then also visually capture where Cosmic Country is coming from. And Joshua Tree was just such an obvious gift for us to pursue and find the time to organize into our schedule. that being where a lot of the Graham Parsons activity happened towards the end of his life, obviously, and all that. So it's inherently a very cosmic place of what's going on.
I just love that open shot, the opening shot. You're like in the corner and it opens out and you can see contextually where everything is. I just think right from there, boom, let's go.
Shout out to Chris Thorne for being patient with us and letting us use his property for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to swing around. We'll talk about what's coming up with everyone, but Clinch Collections, Danny, for you who aren't aware, can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Clinch Collections is a series of t-shirts like the one I'm wearing that are my photographs basically on a t-shirt. And it's inspired by like the early rock and roll and punk rock and skater surf, shirts that were just real simple about here's your favorite artist and here's and I kind of sign it like a print and I put a little information down there. And I partnered with my friend Jeffrey Levine from Golden Goods, who's out of San Francisco. And he hit me up at one point and he was like, dude, we got to do this. This would be really cool. And he was making samples for me and sending them to me. And just the quality of the shirt is super important. And it's really, really good quality. And the printing is done in a real special way, like 12 color printing and on the color stuff. They're super soft. And we got a great bunch of people to participate. We have Fish, Metallica, Green Day, Bruce Springsteen, Sheryl Crow, Joan Jett, Dave Matthews. I'm going to just, Zach
Willie Nelson's on there too. And
what's that?
Willie too.
Oh, Willie. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to wear the Willie shirt too. I love Willie. So there's a lot of, and they're real simple and people seem to really love them. And what's cool about it, if you're like a collector and you like collecting things, is the tag that's on it is, looks like a backstage pass and it's got a little mission statement on there. And on the back of it, it has a little story about this particular photograph and, when it was taken or how it was taken or like a little anecdote about it. And I've learned that people are actually saving the little backstage passes and stuff and that. So it's been really fun. And, to see them out in the wild now, we're finally starting to grow an audience of people who and see that people, once they buy one, they're like, oh, okay, I get it. So, and then they come back and they're buying like the Johnny Cash or the Willie Nelson or, stuff like that. So, and I think this will be cool because this is a short run. The t-shirts that we're doing with Daniel and Cosmic Country, it's a short run. So it should be get it while you can. That's what I'm going to say. So
I just, it's so sad now. Like one of the, it seems to me there's a sadness that I personally experience. And I don't want to project this on anybody else, but music videos used to be such an event. Like that used to be the thing. Like was, what would the video look like? And it was like, well, what's going on in the video? What's the story of the video? And then now, there's millions of songs a month that get uploaded onto Spotify or DSP. And there's, probably hundreds of thousands of videos that get uploaded weekly onto YouTube or any other video platform and stuff. And so, the frequency, not in terms of a value, but in terms of the often-ness, the repetition of something, there's so much getting put out now is that music videos are kind of a non-starter. Like, you see a video on Instagram. Oh, that's nice. It cost $20,000 and, 3 months of editing. And I'll just scroll on to see what deals Amazon has going on my phone. And, the thing that I really wanted to do, and I'm happy that Danny was down to do, is to try to make an event out of this video. Specifically just to have another point of connection with the Cosmic Country community and then Danny's community of people that subscribe to what he does and find beauty in what he does and value in what he does. And so I think the shirt really does help commemorate that because it's an actual moment in time from the creation of that thing. And you just don't see things like that happening nowadays.
Well, now that you shared the cactus story, everyone's in, is watching this. It does sort of entice me for what it's worth. Now I want one. So before we let you both go, I know you're both busy. Daniel, coming up, right? You're making your Opry debut, which must, Nashville based for so long. That must mean a lot. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh man, I mean, the Opry is one of the longest running programs in the history of America. On WSM 650 a.m. The Opry and then Ernest Tubbs Midnight Jamboree are events that I used to listen to every weekend as a kid when I was first growing up. And I would be playing down on Broadway in Nashville for tips, and I would start at 2 p.m. and then I would finish at 11 p.m. and I'd be playing consistently the whole night. And then on my drive home, I would turn on the show and listen to it. And it's in terms of country music, it's one of the greatest events, and all of my heroes have played it. Many times over. Hank Williams Sr., Bob Wills, Ernest Tubb, Marty Robbins. The list goes on, and so to be able to go and play 2 songs there coming up there very soon, it's going to be a high time for us. It's a big moment in cosmic country, and the thing about this world of improvised music is a lot of the bands and artists that are in this space, they seem to pretty much create for people just in this space only, and that's great. But with cosmic country, that something I've always wanted to do is to to me, the doors are open to everybody, and it always have been and always will be. And so we want to get as many people as we can that might listen to, just country music to come and tune into what we're doing. And so the Opry really does give us a moment to bring that into fruition and do it, because it's such a traditional legacy factor of what country music is. You can't really talk about country music without talking about the Grand Ole Opry. It just doesn't happen. Yeah,
I think that's sort of the majesty of the music that you make, is depending on what you bring to it, you can hear a lot of different things in it while still obviously being original to you, to be 100% clear about that. I think that's why so many people are connecting with what you do, because it filters all these things. But again, it's your voice ultimately at the end of the day.
That's all we want now. I think that's what everybody unconsciously wants, is they want to be a human, and they want to talk to a human. And they want to share in what's human together. And there's all these secondary forms of that songs, photos, whatever it is. But they want to know that it's a human connecting with a human. And we're in a very asymmetrical part of time right now, where there's a lot of non-human curation and dialogues that are going on, whether it's algorithmic, what you're being shown, or if you're just calling to pay your cable bill, you have to talk to a robot for 20 minutes. People want to talk to humans again, because we love humans, and we know that there's a value there. There's an eternal adventure that we're all sharing together, and we want to join in time in that moment together. To me, it's very philosophical and heavy at all moments. And so I'm kind of seeing that storyline at all moments happening, So to work with someone like Danny, who does convey the human experience the way that no other human has been able to do like him, to me, that's what it's all about, is sharing in that and bringing that to life.
I just want to say, for people who have not yet had the good fortune to see you live, that I really do think that your music manifests exactly what you just described, and one can have that connection with you, with your band, from the stage. I know you're out like from September, I think, into deep November, so people should go to DanielDonato.com. Check all that out. And by the way, too, I heard you on the Grateful Dead channel extolling the virtues of your favorite Dead tunes, which I thought was pretty awesome as well during Days Between. It was nice to hear you in that context also.
I never got to see Jerry live, and so I'm very grateful that anybody would want to listen to my opinion on any of that at all. But his music does touch me in a very living place of my soul. So yeah, that was awesome. I do think also specifically for fall tour, we're doing 3 nights at the Bowl, so maybe you could come out to that, because it'd be nice to see you, Dean, and Danny, if you're in town. It'd be really fun. Yeah, I think we're also doing the Stone Pony too. Yeah.
Middle of October. That one's in my head. October 18th, I do know, is the Stone Pony for whatever. There's so many dates. I can't really remember all of them. I just try to focus on what goes on the stage. And
I
just
wanted to say, we love to see, Tim Donnelly and I talk about this all the time. And my son Max is like, to watch someone come through, an artist come through, they play the Saint or the gallery, the transparent gallery, to 75, 100 people. And then they move over to, then they play the Wonder Bar in Asbury. And then they play sometimes See Here Now.
On the main stage.
As you did. Yeah.
We're eternally grateful for.
And then they come and they play the Stone Pony. And so it's like this great little like sort of circle to watch people ramp up. Same thing with Billy Strings. Billy Strings came through, did the Saint, did the Wonder Bar, you know, played See Here Now, you know, whatever, played the Pony, I'm sure. And it's pretty awesome. But I also wanted to say that I wanted to talk just for a minute about the Jesse Malin record that's coming out.
Yes.
It's very important to me, and it's called Silver Patron Saints, and it's a record of covers by different artists that cover Jesse Malin songs. And those of you who don't know, Jesse had a really rare spinal stroke and is unable and working hard at walking again, but is, you know, had some real serious health issues. And so all of his friends, which he has many because he's always stood up for everybody else, decided to do some covers. Billy Joe Armstrong, Jack Antonoff, Lucinda Williams, Hold Steady, but they just, you know, incredible group of people. And I was helping Bruce Springsteen as well. I was helping to just sort of get the word out that they were doing the project, and along with my friend Diane Gentile, and you know, everybody had chosen some songs, so I said, well, what songs are left? You know, like maybe I could take a crack at one of these tunes, because I knew these guys were coming to Pappy and Harriet's. I knew I was going out there,
right?
And they put the song a list out of what was left, and I read the lyrics to this song, Almost Grown, which is like a really moving and really super rad tune. And it really just goes to show through everyone, like, what a great songwriter Jesse Malin is. And I think people will see that. And anyway, we decided to record the song at Christopher Thorne's Fireside Sound in Joshua Tree when the guys were out and we were doing the video. And when we came in, I mean, you know, Daniel's band is just incredible. Each one of these guys is just a savant on their instrument, and they all can sing. And they're just the most wonderful bunch of collaborators. And we came in, and I say this because this is the first time I've actually talked about it in public. And I've kind of snuck it out on my Instagram and my social media that, like, I'm on this tune with Daniel Donato and Cosmic Country. And I really feel like people are mostly probably confused as to what's actually going on. Like, I feel like they're reading it and they're going, well, did Danny photograph the record, or what's he doing there? And so I did vocals and harmonica, and these guys did the music, and it was a magical experience, and it is really, really incredible. And it was so good. You know, when I turned it over to Jesse, you know, I was like, I know you didn't really ask us, you know, to do it, but like, we threw this in here, we threw it together, and we love it. And he was just so grateful and moved by it. And he loved the tune, and he just kept telling me like how much he loved it. And they ended up including it on the record, which has like a lot of artists on. I think it might be 30 songs. Maybe it's not. I don't know, but it's a lot of artists, and we're in good company. And you know, it worked out, and it was quite wild.
It was so vulnerable.
Yeah.
It really was.
Like, really quickly. Like, the band, I think, played it twice, and then they all stood around the microphone and did the backing vocals.
Yeah.
And then I did, you know, my take on the vocal and harmonica and some harmonies, and Daniel's slide playing on it is so sick. Everyone's playing on it. It's just incredible. It's magical, in my opinion.
It was. I remember looking out the window. We were doing the slide parts, and we were looking at the Joshua Tree sky coming in through you have the console right here, and then to the left of us was those big glass windows that Chris has in the studio. You know, to be able to create something with you in that capacity, it just made those whole 2 or 3 days that we were out there together just that much more memorable.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm very honored that you thought of us for that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Couldn't have happened otherwise.
So why don't we on that beautiful mutual moment? Why don't we leave it there? Right?
Right.
People can Clinch Collection shirt.
Yep.
Cactus Infused is out there coming soon in the world. Double exposure video. Daniel is on tour, and by the way, people, a bunch of amazing things. Just it's incredible not only to hear the record, but to see a lot of it. You know, see little clips online to see what he does with all of it. He's also sat in with Mr. Phil Lesh not so long ago. That was pretty cool to watch. You can find that. Danny Clinch, Transparent, the gallery, Clinch Collections, DannyClinch.com. Oh, See Here Now Festival. Oh my gosh, I need the two of you. Yeah, you have it all going on. It's delightful. Thank you for making the time, and hope to see you both soon.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Dean. Thank you both.
Thank you both. I appreciate you guys big time.
Likewise.
Take care.